supposed to automatically do it, but I've seen a couple people pop in unmuted. We just don't want the feedback. But anyways, I'll start get going. So as I said, Toma Fletcher, who was supposed to be doing this presentation today, has a throat infection and is silent. So I am filling in for him. Today we're going to do an overview of Storyboard Suite 4. Well, it's currently 4.1. We're a little bit late. We wanted to do one earlier on 4.0, but we're going to show a lot of the new features. So I'm going to cover things that for people who are new to Storyboard and give a bit of an overview, but I also hope to show a lot of things for our existing customers who are on the phone, some little features that they may have missed or not noticed or unaware of, so that, I hit a bunch of different things. So I'm going to go over a lot of the new features that have come in, but also cover the basics of Storyboard too, and try and mix and mingle them in. So as I mentioned before, there is a Q&A window, so if you have questions as they come along, just put them in the Q&A window, and at the end we'll go through the questions and try and answer as many as we can. Also, if the questions come up after, you can always email info or sales@cranksoftware.com or me directly at jason@cranksoftware.com. Anyways, I'll start getting going here and start moving through this. So today, we're just going to do a bit of slides, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the time live in Storyboard. So I'd rather just show you everything live and how it looks and how it feels, rather than actually just talk at a slide level on these subjects. It's a lot better to be able to see them. So today we're going to be talking about Storyboard Suite, in particular our 4.x version. We're now at 4.1, and in the early new year, we are planning to release our 4.2 version. So today I'll be focused on our 4.1 version, but if there are questions, our 4.2 version is starting to come into shape, and so we are starting to be releasing some information on that, so we'll be able to highlight some of those features. Storyboard is our core flagship product, and Storyboard is a UI development environment. It's built by us. It goes across all markets, more or less, in the embedded space, and even into mobile, and some people do use it in the desktop space. And the main reason is for this is Storyboard really is all about the graphics and how you render things. We aren't doing the core logic of your system. We aren't trying to be everything for you. We are the UI to your solution, and we manage it. So we are solving the problems that matter to how do you take a user interface to market, not how do you talk to a CAN bus, not how do you do things that are very particular to a very specific market. We're dealing with the UI iteration, graphics, how you draw, how you get the performance, the size, and move to your targets cleanly, and work with all members of your team. So this is a problem that translates across all the markets, and this is reflective in our customer base. So the reason we did Storyboard, and I want to give a bit of a baseline as to what Storyboard is and why we did it this way, and why we felt there was a need for a change. So we felt there was a big problem in the UI world. A lot of the UI tools people are using have a long history. They go way back, and what's happened in the user interface world has changed a lot. So the demand for rich animated graphics and closer to the experience people are getting with a cell phone is becoming the standard as to what people are expecting. And this is causing a lot of and using tools built with this in mind can become taxing and problematic, and lead to delays in product releases. So along with this demand for richer animated, is the teams are changing, maybe not directly, but maybe indirectly. Before, where engineers would just start putting out widgets and building up a UI, well, a lot of times now, customers are being given, the teams that we're working with are being given a user interface from a user interface team, the art team, whatever it might be, and they have to sort of reproduce what the designers have made. And the bigger issue with it, because now the UI is such in demand and not just product, the fact that it isn't static, it iterates. Because as soon as somebody uses it, it's at a very a emotional, the first thing that you see inside of a user interface is the UI, or the first thing you see in a product is the UI. People are very opinionated on it, and things always change. Now, whether it's because they don't like the look of it, they don't like the feel, they feel there's a better user experience that could be given, maybe the colors don't look correct with the LCD, the touchscreen has a lag, and some modifications to how you navigate through the system have to be made. But what people always realize, as soon as they start seeing the UI, people want changing the UI. So this becomes a lot of information inside the system. So what we felt were the tools weren't really built to empower these teams that we're now working with, because they were all built for the engineering level. They are built like drag out a widget and start writing C++ code. What this does is it already alienates anybody with a graphical background. You know, if you're not an embedded developer at a deep level, you know, you're not comfortable with these two comments. What we wanted to do was sort of change that. We felt that because people who really be in control of the user interface sideline, this caused for lengthy cycles because, you know, there was a lot of back and forth. Things were being and things weren't able to be changed at the rate that they would have thought they would have been. So there was very little time or ability to iterate the UI design, because once it was all written in code, iteration becomes hard. You know, once there's thousands and thousands of lines of code, and when somebody says, can we just change this? Well, that's not always easy, and that becomes... So with Storyboard, what we wanted to do is sort of change the paradigm. We wanted to make it a lot easier to use and have a tool that not only the engineers can use, but also if a designer is on staff, that he can actually come in and control the levels of the UI that he should be responsible for. You know, if an image needs to be updated, he shouldn't need to ask an engineer to update it, put it down on the board, and then come back and see how it looks. Animation, tween, you know, any of these changes should be able to be handled at a pretty high level. So we wanted to make a tool that sort of works for both, not alienating one or the other. Also making it very fast time to show. So, you know, because the iteration is so important, being able to see your UI faster and quicker is more important. So how fast can you see it on the device really helps in understanding what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and make sure that you have the time and cycles for this iteration that's required. And the last thing we wanted to do is, because we are always focused at the embedded, is make sure that we have something that's scalable and optimized. So, you know, we can go down to small MCUs up to your largest MPUs with OpenGLS backends and strong GPUs. So it doesn't really matter. We can scale across product lines and product families. So with Storyboard, we're always focused on a couple key pillars inside of our product. Make sure that it's designer-oriented. The designers can participate inside the workflow. Iteration is important. To change the UI is common. It is not the, it's what you got to be ready for. So we made sure that we've done a lot of work in making sure that as updates and changes happen and iteration happens through the UI, that we can handle them very easily. Team collaboration, whether it's a team of one or two, up to a multi-person team that's across different locations across the world, you know, we can work with that and deal with how we carve up the product and allow people to share and sort of collaborate on the user experience. And as I said from the get-go, we are built from the ground up for embedded. So everything we do is with an embedded focus, making sure the size, the performance, it's all in line with what people are expecting. We are not a desktop solution that was taken from the desktop and brought down to the embedded space. We are built right from the ground up with the embedded design in mind. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the tool and start walking through some samples and show you some things. If people have already been using Storyboard, or they've gone through a presentation with us before, some of it may be, they may have seen a little bit of it, but I'm going to try and bring in some new stuff throughout it to sort of highlight some of the new changes and updates. So I'm going to jump over here. Today we're mainly, well, we're only going to focus on the Storyboard end of the of our solution, not so much the engine on the embedded side. We'll probably cover that in a future webinar, talking more about how we go to all the different embedded artists and MCUs and how we migrate down there and communicate with the underlying system. Today I'll focus more on the design side of things and how the UI is built up and how features are in our new 4.0 version to handle this problem. So what you're seeing here is Storyboard 4.1. This is a cluster we made for telematics, which is an auto show a little while ago. This is the new look of 4.0. If you're using 3.2.1 or below, it has a bit of a different look. The properties view has changed a lot to be a lot more easier to handle. We've added a lot more functionality inside of animation timelines, different pieces, and a lot of usability cleanup has happened. So things are a lot easier and smoother to use. But here you can see the basic flow where you can see your application model. You can see all your images that are inside your project. If there's actions tied to things, if you're using variables, animation timelines are all here. Your properties for all your different pieces are over here, and you can start clicking through and changing different pieces. And we've also added a notes section so you can annotate your document, your UI as you're going along. So you know, just like code, it's always good to keep notes as to what things are doing and why they're doing it. So we've added that functionality so you can add to-dos, notes, and keep them all in. And they will be exported if you ever use our documentation output. So I'm going to jump into a simple sample that most people have seen and start from the base level of storyboard and work up. So what we have here is a very simple thermostat demo. It's a lot of our YouTube videos, but I'm going to use this to sort of start showing a lot of the features that are inside of Storyboard and highlight some of the new ones. So step one is this is a standard Photoshop file. It's using groups that are going to map to our layers. And each of these groups will represent a different screen, and they can be brought directly into Storyboard. So you can see all the different screens here that are available, and then there's the main screen here. Inside of here also have things like the home button, which is this home button here, but there's a home up and down, and what this will do is when Storyboard brings us in, I'll show you, we'll automatically identify the name, and then we will make it into a button so it's easy to use right away. So I'll close down this much bigger project now, and we'll start by hitting our Photoshop import button here. So first thing I'll do is bring in my Photoshop file, which is thermostatdemo.psd. I'm going to import the text, and this is a new part, so if you're using our older versions, we brought all this stuff in as images. Well, now we can bring it in as text, but along with that, there's a couple of more options. Some of them, you'll see some other options down here. We are going to bring this into a new project called Thermostat Demo, but there are some other options, and I'll touch them later on in this webinar on, you know, using a multi-file experience for, and this is for more larger teams collaborating. So first thing I do is say next. Right away, we say this Photoshop file does not have the font that's listed inside the Photoshop file. I mean, our system doesn't have it. So Storyboard will not auto-import fonts on you, and the main reason is this can violate licensing. So if you want a font brought in, you have to explicitly say it. So in this case here, if I double-click on which font should I map Roboto Bold Condensed to, you'll see a list of fonts. So Storyboard does come with a list of fonts. They are all free to use, so you are more than welcome to use them. We have vetted the licenses to make sure they are. And here we actually have one that does match. If you look, there's just the font name is spelled as differently, but so we can match directly. If this font wasn't available, you would have to import it in somewhere, and then you would validate where you got that font from and validate the licenses. So once we hit finish, the system will come in, and now you can see here our font is brought in as we expected. So in 3.2.1, we would just bring the fonts in and just map them to something we had. Now we let you select and pull the correct fonts for your system. Right away, everything from the Photoshop file you saw is brought in and placed correctly. So this is our wireframe view. So we have a wireframe view so you can see the outline of all the controls. So all the images have been broken out. If I come down to the images view here, you can see all the images that were in there. They've all been broken out into individual PNGs. If I come out of wireframe view, there's also an outline view, so you can actually get an outline of all your different blocks. All these different pieces here are images, so you can see over here in our properties view that they're all images. The text here, as we said, is brought in as Roboto Bold Condensed font. It's automatically tied to a variable, so we tie all the fonts to variables right away. But that does is if I come to the variable section here and I wanted to change the font on this system, I can easily flip all the fonts inside the system to another font, but you have to make sure they fit correctly. Let me put it back to the correct font. Also, along with inside that import came all our other layers. So if I just explode this view here, you can see all those other layers I showed you inside the Photoshop file are also brought in and carved apart. So we're just going to look at a couple of these screens and build them up quickly. So with all these different layers, how Storyboard works is you have a screen, and each screen is one or more layers. So this is my screens view, so I'm going to say I'd like to add a new screen. So I'm going to add the fan screen where it has the on and off toggles for each screen. So I'll say fan screen, and then I'll click the fan layer, which has these toggles here that we can see. Then I'm going to say grab me the main navigation layer, and then I'm going to want my wood background. Once I click OK, right from that Photoshop file, if I scroll down here, now my next screen is now ready and available to be used. If I want to start tying these screens together, it becomes very easy. If I say add action, we come up to this dialog here. And this is something we did change a little bit in 4.0. It's not a big change, but this was 3 separate dialogues before, but now we put it as one, so it's very easy to see. Storyboard works very simple. In events, trigger actions, and the actions can have parameters. So I pick my triggering event, and it's going to be a press. There is a filter here, so if I just click press, you can see that it'll just filter down to which ones I want. And then I'm going to do a screen fade. And when I press on that button, I'm going to screen fade to the fan screen. And I say finish, and I've tied my first event. Now, but I tied it to the wrong button because I put it to settings, and I'm going to the fan screen. So I can actually just copy that, and let's put it on the fan screen and paste action. So now when you click on the fan button, it goes to the fan screen. And I'll do the same for the home screen. This one I'll do a little bit fancier, and I'll do a 3D screen rotation, and I'll say go back to the thermostat demo screen. That's just taken from the immediate Photoshop import name, but you can change those all later. And we'll do the same thing. This time we're going to do a 3D rotate, and we are going to do a delta on layer, so it only flips the layers that don't match. So that way the background and the main navigation won't flip, only the middle layer will flip. So if I say finish, right there from Photoshop import, I now have my system up and going. I can save here, and if I click on my fan screen, I do a fade over to my fan screen, and if I click the home screen, my home screen does a 3D flip back to where it was. So what we've done so far is from an artwork, a Photoshop file, we've built up 2 screens, and we've connected them and tied them together with some events and actions. So this makes it very quick and easy. When I simulate this right now, it is running with our true Storyboard engine just compiled for Mac OS in my case. Storyboard Designer does run on multiple desktops, so you can develop on Mac, Windows, or Linux. And each one of those, there is a simulator that will run, and it is the identical engine just compiled for the desktop. So when you're running on an embedded target, 80 to 90% of the code is identical to what you were running on your simulator at the desktop. So I'll close this guy down, and the next thing I want to show you guys is some animations and how they start working. We've done a lot of work on the animation timeline, so let's just do. The easiest way to create an animation inside a Storyboard is to simply hit the record animation. So you'll see a red box come around your screen, and now anything you move or change on the screen will be recorded. Sorry, I just want a drink. In this case, we're going to pull down this Crank Software logo. We'll hide these little tabs here behind the 20 degrees. And, we can move this any piece we want. So anything we move, I could change alphas, I could change alignments, anything that I want, I can change and it will appear. So at this point, I can say stop recording, and it'll say give me a name. I'll just call it down because it's pulling my drop down down. Probably come up with a more descriptive name. I'll say 60 frames a second and say OK. At that point, it took everything I moved, it put it back to where it was in its original position, and then it built me a very simple timeline of what's going on here. Now I'm able to start just dragging and dropping anything I want. So I can start sliding my timeline around. In our new version, we've also added the alignment blocks to to our different pieces so they could be slid around, but if you pick two guys, you could. If I grab this guy and this guy, I can now say align them both to the furthest right, you know. You can stack them if you wanted to stack them. If I click this button, they would be stacked out, but I'm just going to make them come back in, and I can slide them around and make my timeline however I'd like. So right now I've built a custom timeline. It slides. It's going to slide the demo control piece down. You're going to see it change the width of this multicolored rainbow bar, and then it's going to change the Y value of the plus and minus signs. So at this point, all we need to do is trigger it. And once again, as I said, an event triggers an action. So I'm just going to say if somebody clicks on the crank logo here, and they do a press, we can simply say I'd like to trigger an animation, and my animation is down. And I click finish, and right away, if I simulate our board again, our target, and I click on our crank logo, the animation will play out just as I recorded it. So this makes it very easy. So animations can be hard, but you know, and you also want the right people controlling them. So what we've done is we've created a timeline. So now people who are used to using other tools with animation timelines can come in. And internally, we have graphic designers do a lot of work on our demos and such. And when the designers do the work on the timelines, we see such a big difference. I come from an engineering background. When I make a timeline, I'm sliding a Y position or something like what I just did. When our designers make these timelines, they become quite expansive. They get long, they do a lot of detail, popping little pieces and giving you that experience that you get with your phone where every button you press has a little pop, a little animation, and you start to get that richer feel inside of your user interfaces. And that's usually just by putting the tools in the right people's hand. Some of the changes we've also done in here, there's a bit of coloring depending on what you're using, and also because we do get bigger timelines now, we have a compact presentation which just shrinks it down a bit as to what you're looking at. And there's some auto scaling too. If you did want to slow your animation down, I could say, you know, increase it by 200% and it'll scale my animation out. So we put a lot of extra toys and pieces inside of here to make it a lot easier to build up really nice, cool, complex animations. One of the other real quick and helpful things we've done in our new version of Storyboard is many animations you animate something out and you need to animate them back in. Well, rather than just build that animation out, we have an add reverse animation here. So I could just say add reverse animation on this one. I will call it up, same thing, 60 frames. And now I have an animation that is the exact opposite of that other one built backwards. So now I have an animation to go out and in. So when I showed you that demo the first time, I hit the button and the logo slid down. Well, if you clicked it again, it wouldn't move anywhere because it's already down. So what we can do now is, and this helps me show you some of our new pieces, so I will delete that calling it animation, and I will show you what happens if we use some simple Lua bindings. So Lua is our scripting engine built into here to give us a little more smarts to this. So I'm going to say add an action, and this time I'll say if somebody presses on it, I'm going to call it Lua script, and that Lua script will be CB dropdown. And I say finish. And now there's an action on this piece called drop down to call a script. So I can just click edit. There's no scripts yet, so it says, would you like to create it? Yes. And now I have a very simple Lua Editor. The reason I brought you into here too is because there's been a lot of updates. We've updated the entire back end of our Lua scripting engine. So we have always had debugging built into it, but the debugger's there. I won't show you that today. But we also have a lot more syntax highlighting, code completion, outline help inside of here. So now inside of Lua, I can do something very simple, like create a simple if statement and say, if state equals 0, then if you haven't used Lua, it's pretty easy to use. It's a little syntax change from C or C++, you know. But you can see here, I start getting the automatic help and parameters and everything. So I'm going to say, I'm going to trigger an animation if it's 0, and I will call the up, or oops, down first. And then I'll set the state to 1, and else. So you can see here we have a very nice editor that makes it a lot easier to do this work. So So now we actually have tied our up and down to a press. So what I'm doing is I set a simple state. If the state is 0, we slide the bar down. If it's 1 already, then we send it up and we set the states back. So now if I take that same animation that we built from using our pieces, I send 1. Oh, it happens really slow because I slowed it down. I grew it by 200%. And then we click it back and it's the opposite way. So it becomes very quick and easy to start putting these pieces together. So this is really nice and easy. So we brought all these different in, built up an animation, we built up screens, we can start building our stuff. But this is the problem with the is that the UI always iterates. And so, what we want to show here is what happens now is it comes back and says, well, we've changed our mind on the graphics. We want a bit of a flatter look. So I get an updated Photoshop file, and it has a whole new look, but everything's more or less the same. So what can I do with this? If I come back to our storyboard demo here, with 4.x, we can do a re-import. So now I can say import, and inside our import options is re-import a Photoshop file. And what you'll see inside of here is when I click next, it'll ask me for my Photoshop file, and I'll say Photoshop re-import. So it'd be my version 2 or whatever it might be. And he's gonna, this will just tell me there's some layers on there that aren't compressed, but that's fine in our case. We know what they are. And he's gonna give me a list of all the different pieces inside of my UI and start matching up the images that have changed. So if it has a change to the image, he's going to show me. So like this plus image is changing. So before it was this image, now it's this image. So I can slowly walk through and pick them one by one. And you know, you can see here he's changing the sun from a sort of our sort of bright sunny color to a very flat icon outline. And I can keep on going. But, you know, after a while, I don't want to click through every image. And so I'm going to click this auto match, and he'll automatically go through and match everything. So at that point, everything is now matched up, and I can go to my new screen. The next part to this Photoshop import is, well, because these images have changed, some of them have changed sizes, so they don't look right. So if you look here, my pluses and minuses are a little off. My icons may have moved, so everything's just a little bit. So now I can say, well, show it to me with the right selection. So I'll just say, now it's giving me a list of every icon that's changed position. Well, once again, I'll just say select all. And, you know, it'll show me the screens all with the match. So let me grab this scale here. Now you can see if I undo them, you see everything moves back and forth. But obviously I want to take the artwork of the designer and update the positions. But you do have the choice whether you do or not. And at this point, if I say finish, I'll say, do you want to keep the new images or overwrite them? I'll say overwrite them because I feel we're confident that we're moving forward this way. And now my new UI updates with this update. So once again, I can simulate. I've updated from a Photoshop file, and if I click on the logo, the animation plays out like I want it, and will come back the exact same way. So everything I had built in here before is still here and ready to go, but we've brought in the new artwork, so it becomes very powerful that way. A couple other just small notes for people using Storyboard. One of the other things added inside of Storyboard 4.0, or maybe 4.1, was groups. So it's just another organization method, but it's going to become more powerful in the future for our templating. But now if I wanted to take a bunch of pieces and not only just have them on the same layer, I could select multiple guys, and I could say I'd like to add to a group. And I could say AC control or AC group. And it's really just these guys, so they're all put together now, and I can hide them as a group and show them as a group. And the naming conventions can all be, they can all use the exact same names within the group. So in 4.0, we lifted our restriction on identical names, and now you can only not have a name that appear. So inside the groups, you can use the exact same name. So when you're using, we could have the same group here, 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 and here, and all the code will be identical behind all these pieces. hopefully people who are new to this are getting an idea of how Storyboard works. And those of you who have used it before are seeing a little bit of extras. Oh, one other thing I did want to show you here that I forgot to do earlier was also with our new properties, you select multiple controls at the same time. So, you know, if I wanted to change the alpha of all these guys, oh, I grabbed the background too. Wanted to change the alpha of everybody at once, I can't change them all. In this case, if I look at this, I set all the blocks a little bit different. Well, maybe I'll find them. We also have when you're changing sizes, this 9 squares you see beside here where it's the anchor point when you're changing sizes. So in this case, I'm going to select the middle block so everybody grows out so they'll be identical. Otherwise, they'd grow down or left or right. Pick the middle, and now I could say make every block 75 by 75, and now all the blocks are the same, and then I could align the images center, and everybody moves at once. So that to our older customers have been using, this wasn't in there before, but as I said, we keep on making UI updates and improvements to make things easier and faster to develop with. With all that done, I'm going to jumping off to the next part. So the next piece I wanted to cover is a little more on the collaboration side. So we're going to come back to our cluster update that I showed you at the very start. With Storyboard, Storyboard uses a model, so we're not generating or compiling code. So when you do a compare with the system, then do the compare with your system, it won't line right, so you won't just see text. So usually when you do a compare, you're looking at text and you're comparing text lines. Files, look at them and you see the different lines that change. Well, Storyboard, we use our GUI files that you see here for the models. But what we've done is we've hooked our models so that when you do a compare inside of the Eclipse framework with the team perspective, that you can see it. So in this case, my project is SVN. So you can see that here with the little team groups that you see here. And if I make any changes and I'm working with a team, I want to be able to track what those changes are. So in this case, you know, I can just come through here and I could start making changes to different things. So maybe I'll change this guy to show 100. You know, I could change the font to be something else. You know, people could do changes, and whatever it is. But, you know, we can mess with this. We can add new pieces. I could just drop a fill control here. You know, it doesn't really matter what it is. Things are going to change, and at this point, if I say, now this is standard working with Eclipse and team collaboration. You start seeing it change the file. You know, and other things might change too. You know, you might change your scripts or something. I can just put a comment in here. And things will change as you go through. You know, and people are going to do this as you're working with a team. And this is what you experience with the engineers who are working in C code and such. But now what we want to do is make sure that all members, so if we're going to involve people who aren't coming from that coding background, we have to make sure that they can still work in the same environment that embedded product is built. So they need to be able to work. So here we'll say synchronize with repository. We'll go out to the SVN repository, and this is not limited to SVN. This is hooked into the Eclipse team perspective. So Eclipse has different backends for all the different mechanisms, such as you know, Git, SVN, CVS, whatever ones you have. So it doesn't really matter. As long as you can find an Eclipse plugin for it, it will just work. So now you can see that things have changed. So if I clicked on the Lua file that I changed, this is kind of your standard text editor compare and merge that you see. But if I click on the cluster GDE file that's changed, you come up with a list of everything that's in the file, and the things highlighted in yellow are what's changed. So we give a little bit of a quick update up here. So I can say first, just show me properties, don't show me unchanged properties. So only show me things that have changed. And now you can see, you know, what has happened inside of here. You know, you can see that I've moved the branding. I've added a new control. So, you know, I mean, I can pick whether I want to move him left or right. In this case, there's only right to move him. So you can see all these different pieces. But what's more important, because especially with graphics, is how does it look? Because you can't always tell by looking at some text representation of something what that means. So if I click on the image view down here, I can now click and start seeing, oh, this is what he's done. Well, this isn't a good idea. I don't really want to take in this update. Or I don't want to check this in because I broke it. So, you can go all the different pieces and look at them to see what it means. You can see here the text has changed, and you can get a nice graphical view of what these changes really mean to your system before you take them in. So this is an important part to how do I work with other team members if we're working on a project. It's not good enough to have one guy work on the entire UI and nobody else can work on, or it's not a good idea to have the UI completely serialized where only one person can work on it at a time. So this is the first part to our collaboration team pieces that we've been solving with side of Storyboard to help the larger teams we're working with. Like, this is still great when you're just working with 2 people. The second you have more than one person working on a UI, collaboration is a problem. And anything you change will show up, whether it's animation, screen transitions, new pieces, font changes, they will all show up in this list so you can cherry pick and merge things appropriately as you would with your code. The next part I'm going to show you is just the second step to that. So, right now you see these projects that I've built, and, the thermostat demo I did is a single GDE file. So once you're working with one file, this is also problematic because now you always have to compare and merge, and you're always dealing with that. And as the engineers out there know, you wouldn't do this inside, you would probably break out C files into different functional groups so that you don't always conflict. You're not always comparing and merging because, there is always issues once there's too many changes to compare and merge, no matter how diligent you are. Once there's a lot of stuff to deal with or there's multiple people, it gets confusing. So the other thing you want to do is break out these files into separate pieces. And this is one of the new things that was added in our 4.0 version. And this is the ability to do multi-GDE groups. So what we're going to do is I'm going to jump back to a very simple example in Photoshop. And what I'm going to have is a very simple home screen here that you see. And I'm going to make this photo screen, and I'm going to use layers from the first one and then tie these two together as 2 separate models. So we'll close this down. We'll say import Photoshop file. The Photoshop is the home screen. And we'll just create a new project called home screen. It doesn't matter the first one, so it's going to create a new project. And that Photoshop file you saw there shows up same as last. Everything that was in there is available. You can drag new images out. But this time what I'm going to do is I want to bring in the other Photoshop file. If I click on this one, I say Browse. I'm going to grab the photo screen. And this is where all these other options down below that I'm ignoring. I'm going to say import this into existing project as a new file. I could also import this an existing project into the same file, so then I'm actually merging all the Photoshop files into one GDE. So, this is, the Photoshop files I showed you before had all the different screens in one Photoshop file. Well, that's not how all designers work. A lot of times each screen has come out as a different Photoshop file. So in this one, I'm going to say import that into my home screen project, but make a new file called photoscreen.gd. So I'll say finish, and now I have, inside this project, I have a home screen, I have a photo screen as different GDE files. Now with 4.0, what I can do, if we come back to our home screen, if I click on the application in here, there's a piece here called external model references. So now I can say, I'd like to add an external model reference. And it says, it'll look for other guys in my project, and I'll pick the photo screen. And I'm going to want to link them both ways. So the photo screen, I'm going to say, I also want to link from the home screen. Once they're linked, I can start pulling layers from other group projects because I need to share them. So in this example here, I want the background layer that the other screen has. I don't want to copy it because if somebody changes one, I want it to reflect in mine. So now I'm going to say I'd like to add a layer, an existing layer. And we come to this box, some extra options here. There's no other layers in my current project, but I could say import layers from the existing one, and I'm going to grab this sub layer, which is that blue background. So if I just double click, he'll come up, and now he's here, but he's not being used yet. So now I'm going to say add him to my screen. So now my screen will be the photo layer and the sub layer, which is, you see in brackets it says external, saying it's externally referenced. And when I do that, now the background is pulled from the home model. The next thing I want to do now is I want to start tying these guys together. So when somebody clicks on the photo screen, and I can add an action, I'll say if somebody presses on here, I'm going to screen to the photo screen. And you see here, once again, it's marked as external. So it's an external reference, and I say finish. And if I come back to here, I could say if somebody hits the home button, I'd like to add an action, and he's going to do the same thing. If they press on here, we'll do a screen fade back to the home screen. And this guy is an external reference because he's not inside of this GD file. At that point, I can save. If I simulate the home screen right now, you'll see it come up. But if I click on, oh, I already had it built in. Because I ran this demo once before, I had the launcher already set up. But let me delete it so that it's not and show you, because this will be the other thing you'll need to know when you try this your first on your own. If I simulate this guy now, he'll launch it, but if I click on the photo screen, you will see a warning pop up saying transition to an invalid screen. This is because the launcher needs to know to merge models on launch. So if you come up here to the launch configuration file, and I click on here, there's an update to our launcher if you've used our stuff before. And you can see inside of here, the selected model we're launching is the home screen, but we haven't selected the photo screen, which is also in there. So if I just say plus, now we have the home screen and the photo screen. Whichever one is on top will be the master, so that'll be the guy that he picks the start screen from. So if I drag the photo screen up, he would be, but I want the home screen to be the top, so pick it like that. And at this point, if I say, now I click on the photo screen, he does the transition and the transition back. What's nice about that is the team who's working on the photo screen can work on their stuff and not worry about conflicts from the people working on the home screens. You know, so it just lowers the amount of conflict that will happen as you work on your project. So, you know, on bigger applications, you can make different components their own GDE files, and different teams, whether they're located locally or remotely, can go ahead and work at their own pace and not have to worry about constantly conflicting with the entire or the rest of the team. So with all that, I think I'm going to close it down now. So the main thing we wanted to show you was, for those of you who are new to Storyboard, you know, a basic overview of how we work, how we add events and actions, animations, and make it a lot easier for designers and engineers to work together. Those of you who have been using Storyboard, you know, we wanted to make sure that you got an idea of, you know, some of the new features and what we can do. But we've added a lot of content into our new stuff, and I haven't even hit it all, so we'll hopefully cover extra pieces. Also, make sure to watch our YouTube channel. So, you know, as you can see here, you know, we've done a lot of work to make sure it's designer-orientated. We work and make it very easy to start building up very rich animations, pull and remove content, iterate through your design, and work with teams. And as I said, we are built from the ground up with embedded, but, you know, this talk today didn't focus too much on the embedded side of it. So if you haven't yet, make sure there is a 30-day eval available, a Storyboard. So you can download it right off our website. So you'll get a key within minutes of filling out the form. And if you want to see more content on our stuff, you can go to our website. There's a lot of information there. Our documentation is posted up on there. Also under resources, there's a video library on our website, or you can go directly to our YouTube page and get a lot of this content. So I'll start taking some of the questions now. So if you had questions, just post them in the Q&A group. Some people may have come on. If your mic isn't muted, just make sure it is. And I'll start going through some of these. So the first question I have here is, yeah, as always, licensing. Storyboard is our product. Does cost money. It's not open source or free. We do give free evaluations so people can download and try. The way we are licensed is a development seat, and there is a runtime license. So the runtime license is usually a per unit piece. It scales with volume and to match your points, to match your volume. So as you go up in volume, the price drops increasingly fast. You know, most people find it, most people have a very knee-jerk reaction to the idea of runtime licensing, but when they see they see the prices for the different volumes, they see it's quite reasonable what we're asking, and we are not aggressive with our prices that we're putting on these pieces. The development seats, they're sold at $6,000 US per developer, and then there's support maintenance. But that is a seat that can be used across multiple projects. But you know, if you wanted to ask more questions on pricing and such like that, just email sales@cranksoftware.com and they can fill you in on that. I have another question here about Adobe Illustrator. We currently do not integrate with Adobe Illustrator, but all our designers start with Adobe Illustrator that we have in-house. Illustrator doesn't really have the idea of pixel perfect. You know, it's kind of an open canvas. So Photoshop aligns more with the sort of screen framing and positional data that is available. We do have tech notes available on our website on how to easily move from Illustrator to Photoshop and how our designers do it. And if ever there was further questions on that, you know, we could always set up a WebEx or something with our designers here on staff, and they can show you a bit more of their workflow. And it might be an idea for a future webinar is have one of them actually do a talk. Sorry, just going through some of these questions here. There's a bunch. So yeah, here's a good question here on how does Storyboard connect with your hardware. So you have an embedded system, and what I showed you here is everything is self-contained in the UI. I didn't want to get too much into the embedded side in this talk. I wanted to focus more on the designer features. But with Storyboard, we sort of impose a separation of business logic and user interface logic inside of our system. So what that means is we give you an API to communicate to your underlying systems. As I said at the start, we do not intend to be everything to you, your entire world, and we do believe that the separation of UI and business logic is good. It helps with iteration, it helps with sort of design updates and changes, and allows your design team to sort of separate from your systems team and allow them to both work in parallel and not get serialized on one another. So we give a piece called Storyboard IO. Storyboard IO is a library that we provide the library and the headers that allows you to send messages back and forth between the UI and your system code. You send events back and forth, and the events can carry data with different pieces. The data can move back and forth. It's separated, and once it's separated, you can easily, you know, change and update the UI. If I just jump back to our storyboard here, if you are looking, that thermostat demo that I was sort of building up inside of here, if you download our eval, and if you just right-click in the navigation window, there are samples that we ship with our stuff. One sample is that thermostat, and you see it here, the thermostat demo that we have. Another one is thermostat IO. Thermostat IO is a sample of, we take this thermostat simple demo, and we give you the C code to a back end, so when you press the up and down temperature buttons, it sends it to C code, and when changes happen on the C code, that it sends events back and updates the UI. So it gives a very nice, clean example of how to do these different pieces. We support multiple targets, so one of the questions here is across. We provide a binary version of our engine for all the different targets that are out there that we support. A lot of times with Linux, there could be other versions. We may have to do a recompile because of different Yocto recipes and such. But, you know, whether it's QNX, Linux, WinCE, FreeRTOS, Green Hills, Micrium, it doesn't really matter. We have compiled versions against the compiler and everything, and inside that, we will give you the access to libraries. Storyboard, as I said at the start, we do not compile or generate code. We are a data model engine, so we have an engine that will run the data model, and that will sort of interpret the data, and then you can use the events from Storyboard IO to drive the platform to do what you need it to do. One is about performance tuning. Here's an easy question. Can you try the evaluation version on real hardware? Yes. The evaluation version is a full version. And depending on your target, we do ship multiple targets. So this is I'm running on Mac here, but when you install Storyboard on your system, there's an engines directory. Inside the engines directory, well, I grabbed the wrong version here. It's actually our 4.2 early release, but it's the same thing. You'll see all the different targets. So you can see here, this is like Linux for an IMX6 with a Yocto build, frame buffer. So if you're on the IMX Ultralight, if you're on an IMX with OpenGLES 2, so there's all the different backends. And this is very powerful. This means, like, say you're evaluating hardware, you can run it software only, you can run it accelerated, you can run it different ways on different systems. So the same app can run on multiple systems with different backends, because what comes out of Designer is OS agnostic. As far as performance evaluation, I did mention that we are built from the ground up for the embedded system. We have put a lot of debug and insight into it. So if you are launching a demo, and a lot of these things don't really show here because I'm running on a desktop, but you did this on your embedded target, and then you went to the simulator configurations. If you want to, there's a lot of different options here. I went to Logger. You can say gather performance metrics and say, you know, start logging them right from startup, and then just hit on. By default, it will come out, but if I just said perf.plog, now I'm running my system, and while it's doing this, it's actually building up a performance piece. You'll see it show up here, and watch this guy up, show me how much every screen draw, how much it took to load that wood background took 19 milliseconds, so I can start seeing all the different pieces, how the screen all came together. So I know it took 17 milliseconds and 2 milliseconds to render it on this system. So we do have a lot of embedded performance pieces built in, whether it's caching your memory, controlling your cache, dumping and loading. So there's a lot of things to be done inside of there. As I said, if I don't get to your question, feel free to send us an email. You can just send it to info or sales@cranksoftware.com or directly to me at jason@cranksoftware.com. Other questions here, you see? Sorry, I'm just reading through the questions. How does yeah, I discussed the talking to hardware. What platforms do you run on? So what platforms we run on, when you saw that we put up that chart, that's a good list, but it doesn't show our MCU platforms inside of that list I brought up there. So by default, we ship all of our sort of higher-level RTOSes. So here you can see we have Windows Compact, WinCE, QNX 6.6, QNX 6.5, Mac OS, multiple versions of Linux, iOS and Android. And I should probably just step back and show you that, because the important things inside of evaluating is seeing things quick. And a lot of times, hardware isn't ready. We do go to mobile systems. So if I took this demo here and I wanted to put it on my phone, I could simply say I'd like to export, and if I was going to an embedded target, I'd use this one. But we also have export to iOS and export to Android. I don't have an iOS development environment set up, but because Android's a lot easier that way, I can just say export to Android. So he'll say, you know, I'm going to make a thermostat demo APK, and I make it landscape. I'd like it to stretch but maintain the aspect ratio. And if I have my own icons or I need special permissions and such to put in. But if I just click Finish now, he will build me, and now I will have an APK sitting here that is ready to be installed on my phone, so I can actually test out that same UI that I built and simulate on my system is ready to be run on my phone and verified. Yeah, so this is kind of what I was getting in with the Storyboard IO. Sorry, the last one is, does your engine run as a process on Linux and an IO library linked with the our code? Yes. So that's what our Storyboard IO is, and when you look at the release, I didn't close that window again. I should just leave it up. So go to somebody like, so say I was developing on a Linux system, I would grab our runtime for Linux. Inside of here, there's a library, and this is the library you'd use to connect all your pieces together. There's a .a, and the include files are also in here. This is the library. There's full documentation on it available. And this is the library to use, you'd link against, and really it rides over top of a native API. So on Linux, we'll ride over top of sys5 messages. There's a lot of APIs to run on top of. We serialize and we send the messages off so you can actually choose for better message passing systems if there are, and we can also run over other things like TCP/IP or shared memory. It doesn't really matter. So the events can come in from anywhere. And then what this does is this makes it so you can actually leave all your code that controls, like you don't want your UI when you touch a button to actually hit a GPIO or something like that. We'll send a message to your underlying system. You do what you need to do on the hardware. You might send in a status update back to us over our Storyboard IO interface. I think I got to most of the questions in there. So if there's further questions, we can follow up and have other talks. We did record this session today, so I think everybody who signed up for this will, unless we mess something up, we'll get a link to the recording. So we'll post it up on our website. So as I said, make sure, if you haven't tried it already, we do have a 30-day download with everything you've seen today. Everything I've showed you is built right into the download. It is a full-featured download with everything. It runs on Mac, Windows, or Linux desktops, and you can go directly to Target with it. There's a lot of videos and such to help. Also, when you get it, there is quick start guides on a lot of different subjects, and there's also a lot of YouTube videos that can help you get going. Yeah, but anyways, thanks everybody for joining today. We had a great turnout. So hopefully we'll be doing another one soon. We have a bunch of different topics that we would love to talk on. So a lot of our 4.2 stuff is starting to come to light soon. So our next one will probably be a pre-release show of our 4.2, which has some great 3D stuff for working with 3D meshes, and also a lot of new updates for animation pieces. So guys, well, thanks a lot, and that's it for today. As I said, don't be shy to send us an email or call us directly here. Have a good day, everybody.